So it's been almost 2 days as I'm releasing this video since Cerydra did release, and so today I'm here with my first impressions of her as I've practically used no team besides her on it. Just like usual, kicking it off with what I thought during her beta cycle and also like her drip marketing. So she got drip marketed and I was super excited. Her design was really good. Furina is one of my favorite characters in Genshin, and her probably being the closest design we'll ever get to Furina, I was super excited. Off design alone, I was probably going to pick her up either as Sarah at least, even if I didn't end up liking her in-game. There was early info about her that I already covered myself about her being a niche skill buffer, which was fantastic news for me specifically because I use Anoxa religiously, so I was super excited for that. Then, eventually, the beta did start. We saw her kit. At first, we thought it was really good, but as we slowly went on and used more, we realized her kit was relatively underwhelming. For a while, she was really like a side grade to Robin for Anoxa. She was best in slot for Final, but really just not by much. And that constant kind of went throughout the entire beta and still honestly does hold up. She had a very funny incident with, I forgot which version of the beta that it was, where she gained a all-type res that only applied if she was departed, and then it was like, alright, we already know what they want to do at that point, just might as well just say finals on the team. It was really clear that she was kind of just dedicated to be the support for these skill characters, and it's really hard to say skill characters because it's not like she works for Archer either. Well, she does, but not much, but it was mainly like she's just for particularly Final, but also Anoxa at the same time, which I personally would have no problem with. I have zero problems with niche buffers in any game, honestly. Like, I'm not even lying. Like, if they release a character for basic attack, release a character for skill, release a character for ult damage, like, I have no problem with that as long as they don't, like, you know, are so good to the point you can straight up just replace in other teams. If they're like a niche buffer that is best in their role where they are, so let's say, perfect example is someone like Escoffier on Genshin, where she was like the niche technical buffer, well, buffer, quote unquote. But for her team, she kind of went on the freeze teams, that kind of thing, like where these characters are meant to go on that team and they're best there. Honestly, also like Fugue, how you really only use her on the break team, kind of like that. I'm very okay with them releasing niche characters as long as they are noticeably better in that niche. Cerydra really was not much better than Robin for Anoxa, much. And for Final, she was like pretty much like best in slot, but honestly wasn't that big of a difference if you got her or not. But the thing that did set her apart is she had the most, like honestly, most unique thing we do have in a support, where she's able to duplicate the exact version of a skill. Final gets double meteors, Archer can get another extra shot in, all this without consuming stacks or a meteor. Anoxa can get another skill in and hence 2 skills in, giving him up to 4 skills. That main effect there is kind of what solidified her to be the best for mainly Finon and Anoxa, just because the extra skill you can get and the extra 2 skills you can get for Anoxa specifically. The damage increase from that was enough to put her above Robin for Anoxa and whoever for Finon. Problem is, her buffs in itself are very, very mid. Not only are they relatively on the more mid side, they also have horrible uptime as they only apply when you have the period state. So outside of the period state, it's only 1 attack buff. You only really have her buffing the attack for the character if you don't have peerage. Once you have peerage, you get the nice skilled crit damage dealt by 72% and also 10% all-type res pen. But outside of that, it really doesn't do anything. Another thing for Final specifically is her buffs being the attack, the crit damage, the whatever, everything except the all-type res pen is really just whatever for him. Final needs more of these rare buffs. That's why the all-type res pen is really good for him, but he already has a bunch of attack, he has a bunch of crit damage, he has characters that give him more attack and more crit damage, so that's kind of it. I also forgot to mention she does have a speed buff, which is good in certain circumstances, especially with like, you know, attack wound setup, so that's a nice plus side, but that's besides the point. Another annoying thing is she's designed to be a sub DPS, which the main unit she was made in mind for was Finon, not Anoxa, but Finon. Like, she works better with Anoxa technically, but Finon was the main focus. Another thing is, she is sub DPS coded, as I mentioned, gets 100% crit rate. Problem is, when you ult with Finon, she's gone. So, why? I would have much rather they took out her sub DPS capabilities and put in just better buffs. So that's another really annoying thing, especially when I use it with Finon, where it's like, you're not really getting much buffs. But yeah, she does have the additional wind damage she can deal for the person with military merit, so you do get some extra damage bonus, but it's kind of like, whatever. So yeah, throughout the entire beta cycle, I was kind of annoyed at her whole kit, because a lot of designs on her just kind of like, yikes. I already tested her a good amount at that point, and then also her trace that lets her get a charge that only triggers once per battle for when the character with military merit uses ultimate. Why? Just like let it be for whatever. The fact that that trace is only once per battle is just absurd. And also her personal sub DPS damage really doesn't add up to too much. Unless you really go further in with dupes, it really just isn't anything noteworthy. But yeah, so when it was coming to beta cycles and early testing, I was very, very disappointed. However, I still was pretty set on getting her throughout her design, and let's just go with the update. We finally got 3.5, Hyslins came out, I did the story. Unfortunately, Cerydra ended up being a character I don't really like. I don't hate her, but she's my least favorite Crisis hair, and I don't dislike a single Crisis hair. I like all of them. She's the first one I'm indifferent about, so that didn't really help with the case, so I was kind of set on E0 S0. But as someone who uses Robin on so many different teams, I have fine-on setups with her. I religiously still use the facial follow-up team. I use it with Anaxa. I really wish I had a second Robin, and Cerydra was the closest I was going to get. She isn't a second Robin. She is a second Robin for Anaxa and fine-on teams where she is better, at least. It's really not enough to justify a big jump and also the potential, like, you know, pity loss you can get for her. I myself ended up going for E1 S1 anyways, just because her E1 and her dupes are good. Like, her dupes are all really good. E1 helped a little more with getting sub because that defense ignore is active throughout the entire time a person has military merit, and an extra 20% for the skill when you do activate peerage, so that was nice. Since I use it with fine on, that extra energy is felt because it's an extra core flame, so I can get ultimate even quicker, as opposed to Robin, where it's a team-wide advance, so you still technically can do a setup with that. But you get a lot quicker with Cerydra just because you can just spam skill onto your fine on, boom, you're good to go. So mainly because I did need a Robin replacement, but I needed someone to perform just as good as Robin for these teams is why I ended up pushing for E1 S1 despite not really liking her. If she was not really like an upgrade, like let's say her buffs were somehow even worse and they had worse conditions and she ended up being not better than Robin, at least for Anaxa and Finon, I probably would have just ended up skipping. Actually, no, I take that back. I probably would have got Ezra SO just to have her, because again, big Freyna fan. I love Cerydra's design. It's so good. But yeah, unfortunately, I just ended up not liking her that much, and that her kit was kind of a mess. But because of the sheer fact I needed a good Robin replacement that did just as good, if not better, then that was kind of why I went for E1 S1. Because now she does perform better than Robin on Anaxa and Finon teams. Alright, enough about me dogging on her kit. Let's finally talk about my proper first impressions. I've already used her a bunch leading up to this point, so I already knew. But it's obviously better if I just go off my personal testing on my actual account because that's, you know, more realistic. Well, quote unquote realistic. You know what I mean. So as I did expect and, you know, test, she was ending up making Anaxa, Finon, whoever do more damage on those teams respectively, which, you know, was kind of like her whole goal. The extra meter you can get with Finon is super good, especially in phase transition. So let's say you're in the first wave of MOC, you kill with the meteor after finally getting Finon. Oh, Cerydra duplicate does proc on like the moment Finon goes into ultimate for me. So the first meteor kills and then the free second meteor goes on to the second wave. Which is, you know, Finon has crazy multipliers, so the meteor always does a bunch of damage. So that's a big chip down for the second wave. Makes them lose a bunch of HP, makes me be able to kill them really quick. Absolutely just bonkers in something like Pure Fiction as well, where you can stack it up technically a lot faster, because Cerydra plus Finon or Cerydra plus Anaxa and MOC, I don't really have much time to do anything cool because they kind of just evaporate. I know I dogged on our kit a lot, but the double meteor is really, really damn good. And the skill output you can get from Anaxa is also just insane, especially my Anaxa, who's, you know, high invested. And me being the crackhead I am, I have used her on other types of testing, like using her with Akron just because double skill, more stacks. I've used her with Meta, even though the attack buff is wasted, I can get double Godslayer. And honestly, she performs better than I thought with them, so like, it isn't that she's genuinely a bad option. She's obviously not the best. Like, I would not ever recommend you to pull her for your Meta or you pull her for your Akron. But like, it isn't really like a bad option. It actually just performs better than I thought it would. And it's also just fun, you know? I will say, despite me really just having problems with her whole design philosophy and her kit, universally most people agreeing that she really just isn't that great, I will say she is definitely one of the most fun Harmony characters I've used. Most other Harmony characters don't really do anything fun. It's really just generic action advance buff that's on. Cerydra lets you clone a skill. That's really goddamn cool. So at least on the fact that she is, you know, kind of within my expectations, and I'm kind of like, you know, disappointed in how she was designed overall. She doesn't exceed my expectations or anything. My first impressions overall are relatively, I kind of just expected all this within, you know, my mind. Seeing all the changes happen, I kind of expected how she was going to perform, and I was right. At least on the bright side, she is really fun. Unfortunately, I can't do like, you know, crazy funny things like I did with someone like Hyslins, where I can really just throw her anywhere. I can't make a use of the double skill on a lot of characters that are, you know, also fun, like Aglia and so on. So I can't use too much fun universality just to, you know, mess around. But where I can, it is fun. Outside of Akron, that's kind of just boring. But yeah, again, my first impressions is she is pretty much within my expectations. This is not really a character I would recommend most people to summon for. I only really would ever recommend her if you are in either two cases. You main Finon or Anaxa and or both. And the other case is you might use one or the other, but you don't necessarily main them. And you want to free up a slot on the team if you're using Robin and you have multiple teams. Like, again, pretty much in my case, where I have every support and my Robin is overworked and I have her on other teams that she wants to be on, but sometimes I can't because she also wants to be on Anaxa or Finon setup teams. If you want a replacement for that, then Cerydra can very much function there. Because again, Cerydra is better than Robin at the same level investment. I'm pretty sure she's actually better than E1 Robin. I actually can't remember if she's better than E1 Robin at E0. But yeah, if you were to take an E1 Robin versus E1 Cerydra, Cerydra is just better for these characters. But again, it's mainly if you either main Finon or Anaxa, or you're already in like a big endgame point where you had the same issue as me about Robin being taken up on too many teams, so you want Cerydra for that. Those are the only cases I really ever would recommend her. Otherwise, I would not recommend you to spend anything on her. This could change in the future. For some reason, like Star Rail Red likes just throwing up DPS that work with these weird units. There could be a future unit that ends up synergizing perfect with Cerydra that makes her, you know, insane value. I'm just saying that now just so people don't come at me later. It is possible, but in that case, I would just wait for a rerun if it does happen. If it does happen, I personally doubt it, but if it does, you can just wait for the rerun and be good there. For now, though, unless you main Finon, Anaxa, or both, or you need a replacement for Robin on those teams, then I would recommend it. Otherwise, I would not bother. So, again, final recap. My first impressions, she is within my expectations. She is really fun, but she is not really anything that blows me away. Anyway, that does wrap up my first impressions. If you did pull for Cerydra, let me know if you guys are also enjoying her on your teams. I know in my guide, a lot of people are saying they are satisfied with her, which if you're pairing her with Anaxa and Finon, you should be satisfied with her because the performance there is really nice, despite having all the kit philosophy issues that I mentioned in, you know, kind of like the ranting beginning portion of this video. She still does perform good on them, which is, you know, obviously good because if she didn't perform better than other supports on their teams, that would be a big problem and she would have no value at all. But yeah, again, let me know. Peace out.